You're listening to All Hands on Tech. Come along as we get to know the people and businesses behind the province's ever-expanding tech sector.
Each episode, we'll chat with local experts to uncover the hidden gems that make Nova Scotia a hub for collaboration, innovation, and creativity.
All Hands on Tech is proudly produced by Digital Nova Scotia, the industry association for Nova Scotia's growing tech sector. Hey, welcome back to another episode of All Hands on Tech. I'm Eilish.
And I'm allergic to cats, but I still watch the movie. Anyways, my name's Greg, and today we're jumping into an exciting conversation with Amit Vyas, an enterprise account executive, and Geoff Sullivan, a senior sales engineer, both with Arctic Wolf, a global leader in security operations.
That is right. Arctic Wolf is transforming the way organizations approach cybersecurity with their cloud-native security operations platform designed to eliminate cyber risk. And we're going to talk about it. We need a lot of that. With 24/7, 365-day coverage, Arctic Wolf helps businesses of all sizes and industries establish world-class security operations, all at the push of a button.
Amit and Geoff are here to talk about how Arctic Wolf empowers organizations through automated threat detection and managed cybersecurity solutions, providing strategic security guidance along every step of the way. We're excited to dive into how Arctic Wolf is leading the charge against cyber threats.
Hey guys, thanks so much for being here.
Welcome.
Thanks so much.
That was pretty impressive. That was a great, great opening.
You know, like, what is a jellicle cat? That's my question.
I am also allergic to cats, but have a cat.
Oh,
Interesting.
Same, actually.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
gluttons for punishment.
I know,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
right? And was always a dog person too, actually, until we found this cat. We
Now,
rescued
are you
it.
guys like Claritin people, or like what's their...
Well, funny thing,
Kirkland.
I know
We
we're
got the
just we're going
Kirkland stuff
completely
here,
off.
I think is what we've got at home.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. The Kirkland stuff is good.
Yeah.
I've tried a lot of different allergy meds in my time. So shockingly enough, this is very off topic, nothing to do with tech or cybersecurity. Well, depending on how you look at it, I guess. But my doctor thinks that because we foster failed this kitten, and she was like maybe 4.5 weeks old when we took her home from the SPCA in Moncton, and my doctor thinks that because she was so little when we first introduced her to my immune system, I guess, I just built up a tolerance, and now we're fine.
Oh, wow.
That's
So
amazing.
I don't even take a single type
It's
So
amazing.
of allergy
allergic
pill.
at first, but now you're fine, meow.
I should have known. I should have been ready for that.
It won't be the first or the last. Or it will be the first, but not the last.
Definitely not the last. Okay. We will talk maybe a little bit after the recording more about our love of cats, newfound love of cats. But first, we want to get to know you guys a little bit before we actually get to know Arctic Wolf. So we're going to jump in with some icebreaker questions, if that works for you guys. I know we didn't run
Let's
these
go,
by
let's
you.
go.
It's
So,
okay.
okay.
It's okay.
Exciting.
Perfect. Okay, we'll ask both of you, actually. You can answer each question. We'll start with, and I feel like this one should be a fairly easy one for some tech guys. Do you have a favorite tech gadget or app that you just cannot live without?
Interesting. I've been, I don't know if this is, if this would qualify or not, but I've been fully immersed in Duolingo of late.
Same.
Yeah.
What are you learning?
Hey,
Japanese.
Nice.
No way.
Italian.
Nice.
Ah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I've got a 305-day streak going on right now.
Wow. That's
just,
impressive.
just saying.
That's
Wow.
incredible. I'm only at 40.
Okay, hit me with a line. What after 300 and you said 304 days? 305 days?
Yeah. Watashi wa amito desu.
Well, that just sounds like a Megan Thee Stallion lyric to me
Yeah.
at this point. But
What I said was, my name is Amit.
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
He didn't tell you that he used to live in Japan, though. So
Oh.
his wife's Japanese. So,
So-
Come on, man.
Yeah.
So you're a
Alright.
team
So, like,
here. I went like beginner mode. So like every couple of segments, they're like, let's just refresh. How to say hi? And I'm like, I've done this a million
Yeah,
times. But then you're not paying
It's
attention.
a lot
you get
of
it wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
You're like brushing up.
I am brushing.
Yeah.
I'm just
Okay,
staying on
strengthening.
exactly.
Yeah,
Strengthening.
yeah.
Okay.
Duolingo. Love it.
Love that. Love that. Okay, Geoff, what about yourself? Do you
Well,
have
I got a tie. On one hand, I lose things all the time.
Okay.
So I have AirTags on my wallet and my keys, which I know in the cybersecurity world, maybe people might say it's like not the most secure thing.
I
but I'd
mean-
lose it without it. The other thing is, I used to always have business cards. Like, you know, you get a new job, and
Oh,
your
this
business
is-
Yeah.
cards,
yeah,
and
I
you
know where
hand
you're
out
going.
like 20, and
Yep.
then you're
have
left
a
over with all
stack.
this waste, right?
Yeah.
I actually have this like NFC reusable tap business card that has all my information on it, but when you tap it on your phone, it just saves my contact to your
Oh, I love that.
information.
That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That's so
I
cool.
think it's called Blink with a Q.
Okay.
We have something that's got a QR code on it, like
Yeah.
a digital card. It's not bad.
Yeah.
You know, I definitely see where there's times where I'm like, I don't want to carry just like a bunch of them in my pocket.
Right.
And then there's nothing worse than being at a networking event. You pull out a business card that's all like warm from your pocket. And you're like, here you go.
Here you
Just like
go. It's a
ratted
little moist,
corners.
but, you know, you can reach me.
It's very flimsy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need good card stock if you're doing that.
You do need
right.
good card stock. You got to pay for the expensive paper. Yeah, absolutely.
So next question would be, if you could instantly become an expert in any skill or field, what would that be and why?
Oh man, that's a good one. I gotta say finance,
Okay.
right? So
Practical, yeah.
well, that's kind of practical. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
boring answer, but I mean, hey, it's one of those skills that you don't really learn in school, right? Like you go
Yes.
through years and years of schooling, and no one ever really sits down and teaches you all the things that you need to do to properly manage your money, to stay on top of it, properly budget, yada yada yada. So yeah, if I could do that,
Cool.
that'd be kind of cool.
So you're looking at it from like very much a personal standpoint, not like as a business. Because I mean, obviously you can go to school for finance, but
Yeah.
you're looking at it
Yeah,
like
just looking at it
to
from
manage a home.
Yeah,
and
just
cool.
like I said, it's a little boring, but
No, but it's practical.
responsible.
Yeah,
responsible.
It is responsible. That's a
It
good way
is.
to put it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good way. So Jeff, any responsible?
This is going to be the most generic, like, tech person response, but, like, I think I have to talk about AI.
Okay.
Because I think it's such a, it has the potential to have such an impact on so many things. And, I have some level of understanding of it. Of course, we're doing some AI work at Arctic Wolf within the cybersecurity industry, but there's so much more to go, and I think the nerd within me just kind of wants to go a little bit deeper and
wants out.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what, that leads to a perfect shameless plug. So Digital Nova Scotia has just implemented this new program in partnership with St. FX University. It's a micro-credential program
Right on.
specifically around AI with different topics, whether it's AI and project management, whether it's I think there's a cybersecurity.
There should
There's
be,
a
yep.
few different ones, even one coming up in November that's going to be around manufacturing and AI. So as a member, you get access to that for free. You just got to apply within the window that it's open. But definitely a ton of content and upskilling and learning opportunities for folks that want to get involved with AI, who are probably a bit more technical like yourself, or not as technical from like a developer standpoint and want to be introduced to the topic. Keep an eye out for some of that stuff.
That's fantastic.
fantastic, yeah.
I mean, just one thing it's so interesting about that is, like, anytime we have a new technology that can be applied in so many different directions, it really takes the people that understand, the world that they work in, whether you are in finance or whether you're in cybersecurity or whatever, to apply that experience and that expertise, and then kind of brainstorm on what the art of the possible is. So that's really great that you're doing that.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it too, that like something like AI, it is still, so new on a, general population use for sure. That it's like, there's so many different avenues that this really could go. So to become an expert in any of those fields and those pathways, I think is incredible. Yeah. Okay. So switching out of, the tech field completely, our last icebreaker question is, what is the most interesting place that you've ever traveled to and what made it memorable?
So again, probably an easy one for me. It's going to be Japan.
Yeah.
So years ago, it was supposed to be a backpacking trip. I was living in Toronto at the time. Felt like I was getting sucked into a career. Don't think I was ready for it at that time, and so I had no particular draw to Japan. I had some friends that had gone to other parts of Asia, and so I thought, okay, literally was spin the globe and
Cool.
landed on Japan. But it completely changed my life. It turned into it eventually turned into 6 years, a wife and 2 kids. So
Oh my God.
definitely life
awesome.
changing.
Man. I've got goosebumps. That's
Yeah. No, it's
Love
pretty
that.
wild.
Love that. All right, understandably memorable. What about yourself there, Jeff?
See, I'm pretty boring here. Like, I haven't done a lot of traveling. I went to Costa Rica once with my partner, and I think it was memorable because we are both, or have been, very like career focused and didn't really ever prioritize vacation and things like that. So it's really, it's really the one trip where we've actually like gone away and completely unplugged and really relaxed. So I really only have one to talk about.
But that's a good one though. If that's what maybe like jumpstarts the idea for you guys too, that like you need to schedule in the time, because some people are like that. They you have to commit to figuring out the time to not commit.
That's right. That's right. And I think that's exactly what we said on the way back. It's like, oh, okay, we're gonna make time for this. We still haven't gone on another one yet. So,
You've got time.
we're due. We're due.
You're good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump into the nitty gritty of it all. We learned a little bit about you guys as people. So let's learn a little bit about Arctic Wolf as a company. So I'll put it up on the table for both of you guys to answer if you'd like. But for anybody who isn't familiar, what exactly is Arctic Wolf and what sort of services do you guys offer?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, you could probably take my job with that intro that you gave, in the beginning there.
I don't know about that.
No, at the end of the day, I think we are a security operations organization, and our job is to essentially become the security backbone for the organizations that we work with. So what we're doing is we're putting them in the position to be able to detect, respond, recover from any of the data things that might be happening within and throughout their organization. We're responding to those things on their behalf, basically in a 24/7, 365 capacity. And then we're also working with these organizations to kind of focus on the proactive side of things, right? So there's a lot that they need to do to not only react to the day-to-day, but they have to be preparing for what's happening going forward, or what are the new things that these threat actors can leverage. And so we spend a lot of time working with them to help them continuously improve, continuously get better, or make their cybersecurity postures better over time. So it's both that reactive as well as that proactive side that we're kind of bringing to the table.
With that in mind, is there any of your services that are really kind of like standing out as like what's really in demand right now, or it really is kind of that like two-tiered approach that you got to have both to make sure that you really are kind of a fortress?
Yeah. So interesting question. I mean, there are 3 core services that we offer, and I would say in order to do cybersecurity correctly, you've got to have aspects of all of those services, right? So, one of the services that we offer is around people training, right? So you have to ensure that you're creating a culture within your organization where people are aware, right, of kind of what's happening in the wild. So we spend a lot of time working with organizations to train their employees, right? Then you also need to be in a position to be able to understand, what does my risk posture actually look like, right? So in any given organization, if you think about all of the technology that they've got deployed, right? They've got laptops and desktops, they've got printers, they've got, there's so much technology that's deployed across an environment. All of these things are constantly popping up with new vulnerabilities and things that could be exploited, right? And so if you don't have an understanding or an appreciation of what does my risk posture look like, then you're basically asking for trouble, right? So we spend, again, a lot of time with these organizations to ensure that at any given moment they understand exactly where and what their risk posture looks like, and then where should they be focusing their time. Then there's also, you have to be in a position to be able to respond to things 24/7, 365, right? So when you look at all of the services that we offer, you kind of need aspects of all of them in order to effectively, deliver security operations. Is there anything you'd add to that, or?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the way I like to think about it is like to effectively do what we call security operations is it's kind of like having like your own personal health regime. In a way, there are some aspects of it that are sort of maintenance, something like some practices that you have to do. But then sometimes, like on the personal side, you might have an injury, you might have to rehab something. And so the reality is that there is a combination of reactive things as well as proactive things that need to be done on a regular basis. And the reality from what we see is that most organizations don't have sort of the people resources to be able to do all of these things at a regular cadence. And that's really where we come in. So kind of like overall cybersecurity, hygiene, if you will, to make sure that we're doing those things, we're documenting those things, we're measuring them over time, so that our customers can say that they actually are moving the needle in terms of improving their security posture over time.
Sorry, guys, I'm going way off the cuff
No
here. So if there's
problem.
anything you can't answer, I'm just finding it interesting. Do you happen to have numbers as to how many staff you guys actually have on hand? Like what are we looking at when it comes to be able to offer that 24/7, 365 coverage? How many people from your team are then kind of put to helping these clients for each? And I'm sure it differs depending on the size of the companies, but.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at our global footprint, I think something like 2,600 some odd employees globally. Here in Canada, actually, our security operations center, our SOC, is the largest security operations center in the country.
Cool.
Right, and I think we have something like 750 some odd employees in across Canada. So when you think about it from the lens of a customer, they basically have thousands, hundreds, thousands of employees that's their only focus, right? Like we are continuously, like if you can imagine, like our employees are sitting in our security operations centers, butts in seats, eyes on glass, kind of reviewing all of that data that's coming in off of from all of our customers' environments, and they're sitting there actioning it. And you compare that with most organizations here that might be a one-man shop or a two-person shop or 5 people. Like you just can't compare, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm picturing you guys like the Mission Impossible.
Yeah, kind
like
of.
they're
NASA
like
command
light.
center.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've-
it's dim.
You
other
catch one of
than
those phishing emails, everyone's arms are up.
yeah. It's not a stretch to exactly picture it in that
Yeah.
way, because that's essentially what it is.
Cool.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Very cool.
It's pretty wild.
Very cool. Okay, we can get back on track.
So you guys definitely don't need to give any specific names because I know that's proprietary. But what sort of clientele are you working with, or do you want to work with? Like types of businesses, or is there like certain industry verticals that you guys are looking to get into?
Yeah. So at this point, I would say that there is not a single industry vertical that we're not working with.
Nice.
And it ranges from small organizations all the way out to the largest of the large. So most of these organizations, I say most, but I would say the vast majority of these organizations, if you think about it, they're producing widgets, or they're providing services, or they're doing something that is their core competency. Cybersecurity is typically not a core competency for these organizations, right? And so more often than not, that's what we're in business for, is to come in and become, like I said earlier, that backbone for the organization that doesn't have, to Jeff's point, right? They're not running 24/7, right? They don't have the people, they don't have the resources, they don't have the expertise. That's where we kind of come in, right?
Nice.
That's awesome.
And the one thing I would say about that too is, like, what we find is each industry or vertical tends to have like industry specific
Right.
cybersecurity challenges. Like, for instance, law firms is a big one for us. As you can imagine, a lot of private information, a lot of regulation, and reputation is on the line for them, right? On the other hand, construction, which is another big one for us, there's particular risk in the supply chain there. As you can imagine, you've got these large general contractors in on a specific project. You could have 10, 20, 30 different entities that are kind of working together, sharing information back and forth. It kind of creates an opportunity for certain types of attacks and trying to spoof emails and things like that. So it's interesting that depending on the vertical that you're working in, they do have unique requirements based on the nature of their business, the nature of their industry. But there's almost not a vertical I can think of that doesn't have some
Doesn't
sort of
have something,
cybersecurity
yeah.
challenge.
And did I read it on your website, or am I making this up? And there is a chance that's true. That supply chain is the most at risk potentially. Is there something?
It's definitely
It's up there.
Yeah.
It's definitely up there, and it's just it's a scary type of attack, because what we're talking about there is entities and individuals that you trust. You have a working relationship with them down to the person-on-person level. It's their email. You're familiar with that email, and all it takes is somebody within your circle of trust to have their email impacted in some way by a threat actor, and then it becomes really straightforward to to sort of do malicious things and get invoices sent to different bank accounts and things like that. So it's definitely a topic of conversation that we hear a lot, for sure.
I bet.
For sure.
Okay, so kind of touching on clients, partnerships, that sort of thing. You guys have a pretty big deal going on over there, and it kind of surprised me as somebody who doesn't have a full grasp of cybersecurity processes and practices, and also Formula One. But that is the partnership that you guys are working with right now. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Oracle Red Bull Racing.
Yeah, not bad, eh?
That's so cool.
Yeah. So obviously there's only so much that we can kind of talk about as it relates to that, but it's a
cool, eh?
Right? What an elite
I can only let you know a
secret
little
club.
bit.
You can't tell you much.
Kill you.
No, but it's a pretty cool one. And if you think about what it is that we're doing there, again, F1 seconds matter, right? And these are technology companies at their core, right? And so if you think about what it is that they're doing, I mean, there's so much IP, and there's if you think about the data that they're sitting on, that's the difference between first place, second place, last place, whatever, right? All of this R&D and all this intellectual property that they're
safety too, I'm sure.
100%,
Right?
right? And so that becomes our role, right? Going back to what I said, Red Bull Racing is in the business of producing the fastest car out there. They're not in the business of necessarily, becoming a cybersecurity company, right? So they've got people, but it comes back to our normal story that even though they've got the people, they don't necessarily have the time, the resources to do all of the things that they need to do and to do it effectively. And again, if you think about what it is that they're sitting on, that data is gold to them, right? So that's our responsibility, and that's kind of the relationship that we would have from that perspective. In terms of protecting that IP and that R&D, but it is pretty cool. It
really
definitely
neat.
is. It's a fantastic relationship, and honestly, that's not the only. If you think about it from the broader sports perspective as well, we've got NFL teams. I think the Vikings, and there's a bunch that we can't even name, but the Vikings. I think in the NHL, there's the Wild.
Minnesota Wild,
Well, there's a bunch of other. You can go down pretty much every. Major sports entity out there, and you're going to find us in the background.
And I think that speaks to kind of what you said, that there isn't a vertical that you guys aren't in. Everything needs this, especially as we turn further into a digital world.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a protection of some sort. And
100%.
like you said, it's kind of a symbiotic relationship that these people can just push it off to you guys, let you guys do your thing, you guys be the experts and keep them safe, and then they get to focus on
their core competencies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, but have you actually been able to get in a car and race? That's really the biggest question.
No.
The whole
Absolutely
reason.
No, not yet.
Is that in the future? Are we looking at that?
Yeah, 100%. So we run so obviously in Montreal, we put on an event for exclusive customers and partners where we'll bring them out to Montreal, and it is it's the red carpet. Right from start to finish.
You get to meet Max and hang out in the paddock. And
Max.
That's because on a first name basis.
I've only seen pictures of the experience, but it looks incredible.
That's awesome.
Maybe someday we'll get the invite. But that's part. The other part of the relationship is we Arctic Wolf all over the world where we operate. We get to go and bring partners and customers to races, kind of wherever
It's
it is.
pretty cool.
So
it is.
It's awesome. I know our internally when we're reviewing our marketing, it's kind of like our big brand partnership, and I know it's big for our brand, so it's awesome.
Definitely.
Well, congratulations on it. It's like I said, it surprised me. Greg was the one who kind of brought it up that hey, we should talk about this. And I was immediately looking into it. I love racing. I don't follow it well enough to be able to, know anybody on a first name basis, but no, just so fascinating to me. And then it was when I thought of it initially, it was that seems like such a strange partnership. But then when you actually look into it, like you said, that data is, especially now that the sports world is becoming more and more data driven,
Yeah, 100%.
as the science and the research and whatnot becomes more in depth, it absolutely makes sense.
Yeah,
It absolutely does.
totally.
Cool.
So we saw, I think it was maybe from your website, an estimated 215 billion with a capital B
Yes.
is expected to be spent on cybersecurity in 2024 alone. What's happening that's costing us so much money? and who's ultimately going to be spending that.
Spending that money.
Yeah.
You guys have done your research.
Well, thanks.
You say you guys. This is all I'm just here, to
He's just here to
provide
look
comedic
good.
insight.
There you go.
He's the face of the podcast.
That's funny. I mean, that's our story in a nutshell right there, in terms of exactly some of those data points, right? So I think at one point, I remember reading somewhere that, like, if you were to look at cybersecurity or cybercrime, as GDP, or I think it was something along those lines, right? Like, if you were to look at a country's GDP, right? So you got the U.S., China, and if you were to look at cybercrime in those terms, it would be the third largest GDP after
Really?
the U.S. and China. So that's, I mean, it's incredibly lucrative, right, for these threat actors and essentially they're businesses, right, and they're extremely effective at what they do, obviously. So back to your 200 billion, I think organizations around the world, they're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on predominantly the acquisition of tools, right? So I don't know, what is it, 3,000 some odd vendors that are out there. So there's no shortage of tools that are out there that are designed to help organizations, try to stay ahead of their risk and their build up their security posture and those types of things. The challenge comes back to what we were saying earlier, right? Even though organizations go out and spend hundreds of billions of dollars on these tools, we've got a stat that shows that cybercrime continues to go up, right? And so there's this massive disconnect in terms of, because you would expect that if we continue to invest heavily in tools and if we're trying to do the right things, it's going to have a positive impact on our posture, but it's the exact opposite. And so the reason comes back to exactly what Geoff and I have talked about, which is, if you think about these organizations, they don't have the people, they don't have the resources. These tools typically require quite a bit of expertise to effectively, operationalize them. And none of these organizations, I shouldn't say none, but most organizations don't have those capabilities in-house. And so that's where we kind of step in, is to help them operationalize those investments.
And I guess maybe just to go a layer deeper into the problem, right? And think about it, it's a logical reaction. Something happens, we get breached.
Go up, buy a tool.
I got to go out and I got to buy a tool, right? It's amazing how security budgets open up after somebody gets breached. But that is a logical reaction, right? Something got through my network. I need some sort of network security tool. But the reality is that you go out and you sort of collect these tools, and really what they are doing is they're creating a lot of noise. They're logging things that are happening every time somebody logs into their email, every time somebody visits a website, like on and on and on. And it creates a lot of noise, right? And all of this data is sort of disparate and kind of separated, and one thing is not talking to the other. And it creates what we call in the industry like alert fatigue. It's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. It's like, okay, I'm going to just start like ignoring this stuff, but then all of a sudden I just ignored the one thing that I needed to look at. That's really what we are trying to address, right? And going back to Amit's point is like, you really need people to suss out what this is all telling us. And that's where we kind of fit in. We reduce that noise. We take that responsibility on behalf of our customers. And we make sure that like when we're coming out to our customers that something has happened, it's exactly what happened, why does it matter, and exactly the steps that they need to take so that they can sort of focus on their day-to-day and we can kind of cover them from a security perspective.
Nice. Interesting. You guys recently released your 2024 State of Cybersecurity Trend Report. I don't imagine we're seeing what's fashionable in that, what people are wearing on the red carpet. So what are we actually seeing then in that trend report?
Yeah, so I think the one that stands out for me is 70% of organizations who were surveyed have been an attempted business email compromise attack against them. And what a business email compromise attack is probably from a technical perspective, is probably the simplest. I don't want to offend any threat actors out there, but basically what it involves is using things like social engineering to try and get into somebody's email, right? And eventually take it over. And the sorts of things that we see from there, I mean, even Amit and I, from talking to prospects on a regular basis, you hear about the gift card scams, right? Your CEO reaches out to you and asks you to go buy, $2,500 worth of Amazon gift cards. The other one that we see quite often is, hey, can you pay this invoice, but can you send it to this account rather than the account we normally send it to? So, really from a technology perspective, not super sophisticated, but using more the human element. Spending time sort of like zoning in on somebody, understanding who they are, what they do, where they live, what their day looks like, the types of, or the people that they communicate with.
How they communicate.
I think we already mentioned AI. I think that's only making the problem worse. But getting back to the threat report, I think the stat was 70% have been targeted, and of that 70%, 1/3 has been a victim of at least one BEC attack. And I know certainly it's the one we hear about most here in Atlantic, Canada, for sure.
There was another one that you was it data exfiltration or something?
That's right. So on the other end of the spectrum, ransomware, which is a much more technical attack type, I would say. It's the concept of a threat actor getting into a victim's systems and essentially locking them out, right, preventing them from doing work, and then sending them a ransom note saying it's going to cost X amount of dollars for us to unlock your data. So that's kind of the first ransom. But what we're starting to see more and more of is like a double extortion, or sometimes even a triple extortion. So the double extortion is, hey, we've encrypted your data, pay me this much money. Then the second extortion is, hey, we've actually pulled this data out of your systems. It's now on ours, and we'll release it to the public, or we'll let the victims know. So there's the other extortion. The third extortion we're starting to see now is there's more and more regulations around, in the US, for instance, in the last year, the SEC has come out with rules that if you are a publicly traded company, you need to disclose a breach within, I think,
48 hours.
48 or 72 hours.
Something like that, yeah.
Anyway. But there's been cases of the threat actor has encrypted the data, they've exfiltrated data, and then they actually reached out to the SEC saying, hey, we hacked this company, and they have not reported it to you yet. And so now they're all...
They
Imagine
told
that.
on
Just like
themselves.
snitching on themselves.
And they
Yes.
tripled, like to double dip, like I'm just talking chips and dip, that's one thing. But to triple dip, especially when it comes to like cybersecurity, that's monstrous.
That just seems
wild.
like such a bold strategy.
Yeah.
I will say though, there is, that there's folks that are out there doing this sort of thing, but it's the unpredictability, and it's, people aren't going to, they will surprise you. So prior to my time at Digital Nova Scotia, I was exporting lobsters all over the world. Very different from what I'm doing now. But prior to that, I used to be in account management and business development at agencies that would like build websites and do more digital marketing. So when I was at this company, there was a potential customer that reached out and they said, here's my information. They fill out like a credit application form. And there were certain things that I just felt were a little off. And, obviously like little things like if they're using a Gmail or whatever, they want to make their first payment on a credit card or something like that. But it was the fact that these guys would have a website spun up with their brand, and then you'd look up their address and then be like, first thing, this is an industrial park in Montreal. This is definitely not correct. But then you see like stock photography, so I would do like a reverse image search, or I would, my very base level red flags look out for, or I would do like a who is lookup, and be like,
that's
how
you're doing all the right things.
So I would do those. I remember sending this like long report internally, and they're like, just don't talk to them. And I was like, I feel like we should report them. Something like. Because there's times where, we knew of other folks in the industry, it'd be like a few $100,000 worth of orders. And, it's not just spinning up a website. They would have, sophisticated, logistics folks that would come in and do that sort of thing. And people in the industry would get burnt for it. There was a guy named the Codfather, and you could look it up. He was basically like a crime syndicate leader in the States, known as the Codfather. And I remember looking at this news article being like, this is hilarious, but it was like $1 billion thing, and I was like, this is pretty crazy. It wasn't the Codfather that reached out our way, but maybe like a distant cousin or something. But
I don't know that the general public really grasps how organized,
Yeah.
especially on the ransomware side, these organizations are. So we're to the point now where a lot of the ransomware that occurs is it's software created by like a company, but a bad company. And they write the software, they support the software, they have their own support numbers and chat rooms. And instead of one organization kind of delivering the whole attack end to end, usually what it is partnerships. It's like a channel, right? You have these initial access brokers whose jobs it is to, get people's usernames and passwords and get in that front door. But when it actually comes to delivering what they call that ransomware payload, it's like a licensing fee to a third party. And what they do is they divvy up the ransom, right? Like the initial access broker gets a certain percentage of it. The ransomware as a service provider gets a certain percentage of it. So it's its own little, I won't even call it a microeconomy. Like it's a significant economy. It's highly organized. And I don't necessarily think that most people really understand, what you're dealing with. It's not often, when we're talking about these big attacks that are in the news, that it is, some teenager that's doing this for, their own curiosity, right?
Yeah.
It's often very, very organized.
So how does it get to that point of these like bad guy organizations working so well together, and their plans are not foiled by some other agency? Where's the missing link here?
Money.
I would say it's money, right?
Okay.
Well, there's a couple motivations, right? On the commercial side, there's the money, right?
There's also
And
the
I would
yeah.
say that if you are really technical and you know cybersecurity, you might be able to make more money on the bad side than the good side. I don't know for sure, but you might be able to.
Oh no!
That's not a plug.
That's not a
pays
plug.
to be bad, but don't.
Don't do it. And then there's the other side of it is like the nation state actors, which again, I think people think about the business that they're in and they say, a nation state actor would not be interested in me. When we're talking about nation state actors, without mentioning any country specifically, these are hacking groups that are financially backed by actual countries, right? And there's about a half dozen of them that are highly active. And certainly they've got different motivations, whether it's corporate espionage or things like that. But it's just the opportunity is so big, and that's why the way it is. That's why it is the way it is.
Now, would it be rare to see someone go from one of those organizations and then kind of
Flip
jump
onto the
ship
other
and
side.
like become like an ethical hacker?
Yeah,
Like, do you ever see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
A lot of times it happens when they get caught.
Yeah, it usually happens.
After they do like their jail time, they're
I've seen the light.
I'm reformed.
There's a lot of there's people that have written books about it, and there are people that have reformed and are helping out like the government and things like that. So there definitely is some of that. And I'm sure there's definitely people that maybe work a little bit of both sides. I don't know.
That's awesome.
He's like, I'm not saying anything else. I like my job, and I'm not getting paid by anybody else. Okay, switching gears completely here now. You guys, you're always at these different events. We always see either your name or some of your folks out, whether it be some networking events or what have you here in Halifax. You're obviously an international company. Why is it so important that you guys build that community connection here locally on the East Coast? I always say it, even though every guest we've had on this podcast kind of puts me to shame that we seem so little here on the East Coast. Obviously we're not. We've attracted a company such as Arctic Wolf. So why work to foster that connection here versus at, those international levels?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, our market, right? Those relationships are so important in Atlantic Canada, right? The Maritimes, Atlantic Canada in general. So us having a presence here is extremely important, I'd say, right? People buy from people, and us being involved in the community and being out there, I think is important. There was also up to a certain point this feeling in the Maritimes or in Atlantic Canada that this stuff doesn't happen here.
Yeah.
And that couldn't be further from the truth, sadly, right? So I think there is that appreciation now that, right, there have been some well-known, breaches that were in the news, and so I think that's opened some eyes. And again, Jeff and I are. It's kind of funny, right? When we first started, we were kind of it's been a couple of years now, right? I remember when we would first kind of meet with organizations, they had definitely not heard of us, and they weren't really even familiar with what it was that we did or security operations as a whole, right? But fast forward 2 years, and that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
And it's both because we've been really involved, but it's also because that threat landscape is
Ever evolving.
100%. 100%.
Which is a bit of a double-edged sword, because I, obviously don't want there to be cybersecurity threats, but I would like for you guys to have jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we actually talked. I think Greg, when we walked in, we were talking about that, right? I mean, there was I forgot what the context was or how it came up, but there was. I think we were talking about Newfoundland. That's what it was. And sadly, there's been a lot of nefarious activity in Newfoundland. So I just said, yeah. I mean, on one hand, it's sad to see, but on the other hand, I guess it's kind of good for business, right?
Well, that's obviously where the Codfather came from. Those are his origins.
I think he was from south of Maine, but definitely
The Cad Father.
Yeah, it's pretty sketchy. But I still love it because I'd be like, man, this is the Codfather, and someone would just laugh. And I'm like, it's quite an intense
I'm not joking.
business. I'd be afraid. You don't know what happens out at sea.
Yeah, this
Really?
is true.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, with that said, we would love to give the floor to you guys. If there's anything new and exciting that you guys want to talk about, anything, just to get people aware of. If there's like hey, did you know that this is like one common thing that most people wouldn't realize is actually super risky from a cybersecurity standpoint? Floor's yours.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll let Jeff provide the tidbits of knowledge. But yeah, this from my perspective, this was a lot of fun.
Okay.
Yeah, this is kind of the first time that I've kind of done something like this. So
you're a natural.
I'd love to do this again.
I would love to. I would absolutely. That's the thing. Like this subject it's both broad and deep, and I think especially as the technical.
The smart one. Let's be honest. Let's be honest.
Of this duo, I do feel like it's sort of my responsibility to spread awareness about all of the implications related to cybersecurity out there. So I don't know, maybe there's a future where we would do more of these talks with you folks and kind of spread the word a little bit, because like I said, there's we could go on and on and on about this. In terms of tidbits, you're really stumping me here and putting me on the spot. Here's what I will do. This is very simple. We have this saying at Arctic Wolf. So Amit kind of talked about security awareness training, and that's kind of educating your end users to know what to look for, when it comes to potentially malicious emails or something like that. So we always have this saying: if it makes you go, report it. Well, and what we're trying to do here is I don't know if you've had any experience of maybe falling for a phishing simulation or something like
Jeff
that.
has.
I actually have. I have failed a phishing simulation. I'm
An
not,
internal one.
I'm laughing. I shouldn't be laughing.
So quick to call you out, too, though.
you know what?
It's pretty funny though.
You just called him the smart guy, too.
This is true. I take that back.
I think the industry, the whole security awareness thing used to be a bit of a hand slapping exercise, right? You failed, I slap your hand, we documented, but the behavior that drives is, I no longer want to report anything anymore. I'm kind of scared.
Yeah.
And really what we want to do is really encourage people to reach out to their IT departments or their security teams if they have one. Like I said, if it makes you go, don't even think about it, just report it. That's really the type of culture that we're trying to build. It's like I like to say, it's better safe than salmonella. So that's my
Fair.
one.
All right.
That's my one little takeaway. If it makes you go,
Well, that
report
makes me have a question then, because, and I'm sure there's some folks out there that do this, but you see a suspected phishing email come in, and you're like, this seems sketch.
Yeah.
But it's been a long day. I'm just going to delete it instead or move it to spam versus reporting it. What risk is there in doing that? Or if you're able to be I can tell that's not the right email, throw it in spam or whatever, is there any risk there? Or Is it the risk being that one of these times you're gonna
Right, yeah.
also be at the end of the day and be a little tired and click on that, link?
Yeah, so typically the risks associated with those emails are either a malicious attachment or a link that's in the body of the email.
Okay.
And so typically, so long as you're not downloading that attachment or clicking that link, you're good. Usually when you hit that report a phish button, what it does is it will actually route the email to your junk or your deleted files or your spam, and it will send a report to your IT person. The downside of not reporting it is that maybe your IT person or your security provider could actually do something a little bit more proactive in terms of like blocking that particular email address or doing something to actually stop that threat in its tracks. Whereas if you just kind of put it in your spam and forget about it, as long as you don't click it, you might be okay, but you're really not doing anything to prevent it in the future. So that's the one thing I'd say about that.
But Greg, you're the thing that you were just talking about in terms of late in the day or tired or what have you. That's generally what happens, right? So in the case, I threw Geoff under the bus a second ago, but in his situation, he and I were actually on a call together. We were working through a proposal, or I forgot what it was that we were doing.
I
But
was sharing my screen
yeah.
with you. Like we were remote, I was sharing my screen with you, and I was kind of doing two things at once.
Yeah, exactly, right? So he was doing two things at once. This email phish came through, which was a test, right? It was an internal test. And a lot of times these things look like it's hard. This is not like a few years ago where there's grammatical errors and all that. I mean, now it looks legit. It's hard.
I think it was a subject line, upcoming changes to the vacation policy. And so I was on my laptop, sharing my screen, showing Amit something, and then, my phone buzzes and I look at it and I'm like, oh, what is this? Changes to the, oh no, I failed it,
Yeah.
right?
No.
Yeah.
So that's. I mean, it's as easy as that,
It's
right?
like a
Yeah.
muscle memory kind of
Yeah.
thing.
It is,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is, right? I was thinking of two things probably more than two things. But I was multitasking
Yeah.
and, I let my guard down and,
all it
luckily it
takes.
was just a simulation.
Yeah.
It can certainly happen.
Those simulations can get you too, because like we used to get a bunch of them, and there's times where I'm like, okay, I just don't want any more of these because you sent me so many. I get it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to click on it. And then one of them came, and I just clicked delete instead of whatever. And it's like, hey, just so you know, you deleted that. Here's 4 hours of security training for you. And I was like, oh, no, you got me. And then a reminder every 35 minutes to be like, you haven't started this yet. Would you like to do this? I don't, but I should.
Well, you would love our training program because it's actually micro learning based. So instead of like long 35-minute things, like a couple times a year,
Yeah.
it's every 2 weeks you're getting a 2 to 3 minute activity, like short snippets.
Okay.
It's kind of proven to give you better recall and things like that.
They're humorous.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's like a Duolingo, but
Yeah, it is,
cybersecurity.
exactly.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Yeah.
Do you guys offer house calls for, say, maybe my mom? Because I'm currently the cybersecurity protection in her home, and it's not going well.
Yeah. The consumer side is tough. I mean, we don't typically deal with it, just as a part of our work. I am also the family cybersecurity person.
Yeah.
But that's a challenge too. Not only like at home, but in the workplaces. We've got multiple generations of
Yes.
people in the workforce and at home, and their level of comfort with technology varies.
Ranges, yeah.
And that is totally a challenge, right?
I bet.
But we don't do house calls, unfortunately.
Okay,
You can
fine.
send me an email and informally I can help you. Maybe.
I'll
You
hook you
can
up.
bill me outside. I'll be the bad guy company that you're working for on the outside.
Those like glasses and mustache disguises.
Exactly. Well, gentlemen, that's it for our questions. This has been, like you
Yeah.
say, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I didn't realize coming into it that it was going to be this fun, so I'm really glad that
You
we're
say
ending
that
on
to
this
everybody.
note. You got me, Greg.
Yeah, you can't spell cybersecurity without fun. Just like in there somewhere. But,
It's
Just
gotta be
all
in there,
silent
yeah.
letters.
Yeah, silent letters.
It's just all silent.
but no, this is great. It's good for people to learn a lot. I would encourage anyone who's listening or viewing the podcast. Arctic Wolf puts out a threat report regularly. Really great to take a look through there if it's something that you're thinking of, just to learn a little bit more about. But there's also some other great tools that you have on the website as well to just teach folks about what you guys are seeing, the typical types of attacks, and ways that you can get ahead of those. So check that out, and I'm sure at some of our other events you'll be able to meet Geoff and Amit as well. So be sure to chat with them next time you see them at a DNS mixer.
Absolutely.
Boom.
Thanks so much for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Recorded by This Is Marketing, unblanding branding since 2015.